Hi everyone, welcome to Glow with Grace. So I'm trying another camera today because we're having all kinds of camera conundrums, and today I wanted to answer some more of your questions. I have this whole sheet full of questions that you guys have sent in over the last month and a half or so of Glow with Grace. So I'm going to try to answer more today, and let's get started. So the first one, very seasonal, topical one. Someone was asking, what are we doing about Christmas? Do we celebrate Christmas? Do we do anything about it here in Ecuador? No, is pretty much the answer. Mr. Monarch and I both grew up with Christmas in our lives. He's Jewish, so we had Hanukkah and Christmas, and I had very kind of traditional English, British Christmas thing going on. And neither of us are like particularly excited about that whole thing. And living here, it feels like we have this whole new opportunity to choose which kind of holidays and traditions we pay any attention to and create our own traditions as well, if we choose to, or we can just like let things go by, you know. I've been trying to imagine how to explain different holidays to Araya in a way that would make sense to her, telling the truth. So when Halloween happened recently, for example, I was trying to imagine explaining it, like, okay, well, people put on like strange clothes and they go to other people's houses demanding food, and then they eat it and they usually feel kind of ill. Really? Like, what's that all about? And of course, I know there's like older origins to all of these holidays, but my impression is that most of those origins have been more or less completely lost, forgotten, glossed over with consumerism at this point. So, yeah, we're not really doing anything, it feels like, about Christmas here at this point. You know, Christmas in my head is all like Christmas trees, snow, presents, Christmas music, turkey, that kind of thing. You know, that's what I grew up with in England, and it doesn't feel anything like that here in Ecuador, you know. And they don't seem to even make that much of a big deal of Christmas anyway themselves, the locals here. So yeah, nothing's really happening, and it feels good. You know, it's interesting. But if I connect to people in the UK or the US or whatever, and they're in that whole kind of Christmas reality that I used to be part of, it's interesting. It feels kind of almost like we're in a detox from Christmas or something, or all of those kind of holidays. We're just not part of it anymore. That's our choice. And I can imagine if you are actually living in that kind of place and really heavily involved in that kind of flow, that might feel like perhaps challenging choice to make. But here it feels really easy. So that's where we're at. No trees, no presents, no lights, no nothing. Okay, and maybe we'll create our own traditions, but we're just not at that point right now. Okay, somebody asked, do I prefer colonics or enemas? Colonics, if I was to choose. It's important to understand that they're basically the same thing. They're both forms of colon hydrotherapy, introducing water into the colon to clean it out, which then creates space in the colon for the small intestines, especially, to dump more waste out. The average person is said to have 5 to 10 pounds of old waste sitting in their intestines, the small intestines at this point. So it's a great idea to get that stuff out. So basically, yeah, enemas or colonics, you're putting water into the colon to help move that waste out. Colonics, you know, we do like gravity-fed colonics, so it's pretty much just doing like a huge enema where you don't get up from the table. You know, everything kind of comes in and out while you're laying there on the table, whereas with an enema, you're laying usually on the floor and you take the water into your body and then you get up and release it into the toilet. And it's a lot less water, unless you sit there and do like enema after enema after enema. So yeah, I prefer colonics. Most people, though, tend to be in a position where enemas are an easier choice for them because they don't have a home colonic unit, which is actually pretty inexpensive to set up, to tell you the truth. I feel like the number is probably like $400 or $500 or less that you could set up a home colonic unit with, and then there's no need to ever go and pay for colonics with somebody else, because for some reason the colonics industry has created a really high price table for itself, and it's usually pretty expensive to go and get colonics with someone. Like $80, $100, $60, depends where you are. So, you know, you set up a home colonic unit like that, and, you know, 4 or 5 colonics, 6 colonics, whatever, you've already paid for it. And we have our own here, we have our own colonic unit, and what I find is that it's fascinating to administer colonics to yourself, because you start to understand your own body way more intricately than if somebody else is administering it to you. Enemas, you know, you can literally go and buy an enema bag for like $10 at your local pharmacy probably. It's going to be a little thing. We sell kind of professional enema bags that are like $60 or something. And, you know, that's great choices, especially if you're traveling, obviously. That's the way to go. If you live somewhere, though, and you are into colon hydrotherapy, I would set up a home colonic unit if I was you, because you just get so much more water into your body in the space of time that you would be getting not as much in with an enema, and you can get so much more waste out of your body, speed up your detox, all that kind of stuff. And then there's Kalima boards, of course, as well, but they're kind of like, I don't know, a bit kind of silly and messy, and I would just get a colonic unit. Home, gravity fed. I know you're all going to be asking me for links. I wish I knew the link. Maybe I'll ask Mr. Monarch and I'll put it in the box underneath here. Okay, the description. Someone was asking about endometriosis. As you can tell, I don't know much about it because I can't even pronounce it. So I do know that it's a very strange condition that women get in their body where, oh God, it just makes me cringe even to think about it. It's like the tissue that bleeds, usually during menstrual cycles, is like all throughout your body and bleeding or something. Oof, it just sounds bizarre. I really don't know anything about it. I first heard about it just a couple of years ago from a friend of ours called Heather Rodriguez, who is a wonderful herbalist and expert on natural fertility, and so I would suggest you go over to her site and ask her about it, or find stuff that she's written on it. Her site is natural-fertility-info.com. Heather, she'll help you out with that one. What else? Oh, somebody asked me about amber necklaces for babies for teething. Do I think they're any good? Is it worth getting one? Honestly, I don't know. We have one for Araya. She has no interest in it, and it's actually kind of short. Like, I think we got it from that kind of typical company that you see everywhere. It's called something like Baltic Amber or something like that. And it's kind of short, and it's kind of like a choking thing or something. And she just doesn't care about it, you know? She's never been into chewing on it. The main thing, if you're thinking about teething issues, the main thing that I have found to be really helpful with her is I have chamomile oil. We sell chamomile oil on our site. There's a bottle here somewhere. Chamomile Roman essential oil, and I put that on the soles of her feet, especially at night if I know she's in a teething stage, and also sometimes during the day if it's like really cranky, crazy. And basically that's it. That's what I do for her. I put chamomile oil on her feet. Sometimes we drink chamomile tea as well. I know a lot of people like the homeopathic remedy chamomilla. I just feel strange about most homeopathic remedies are made with sucrose, you know? Maybe someone can explain why that is. You know, I know there's this idea of like, because of the energy of the homeopathic remedy, that's kind of bypassed the sucrose part, but I feel strange about giving sucrose to my daughter who's never had any refined sugar. So I don't go that route, but a lot of people do. Amber necklaces, I don't know. If I was to do everything again, I probably wouldn't bother buying one because she doesn't care about it, you know? But I know a lot of people use them and love them. So I guess it depends on the child, and hope that helps. someone was asking about the issues that Araya and I had breastfeeding at the start of our journey. So I wrote all about this in my book, A Gentle Start, if you want to read into it more. But here we go. What happened? We basically had huge issues with her latching on in the very beginning. We were extremely blessed to have some great friends nearby who came over and really, really helped us to get that latch working. They literally sat with us for hours and hours and hours and hours trying to help Araya to get latched on, which she eventually did, obviously. And then what happened was a huge amount of pain. I had like bleeding, cracked, sore nipples. I mean, just absolute agony. I would literally be crying going to breastfeed her because I knew, okay, she's going to eat and this is my job, feeding her. But I just knew the pain that was about to come. And it was complete agony. And there was nothing to do but to just push through it. So I used the natural nipple butter from Earth Mama Angel Baby, just religiously all the time, like after feeding, in between feedings, before feeding, just like constantly. And that gave me some relief, and I pretty much could not wear anything at all except bamboo clothing, which, you know, is like a really, really soft fiber. And that was it. I could just wear like a bamboo top, and I would even kind of be like hunching it away from my body just to have like nothing against the nipples because it was so painful, so sensitive. And, you know, like taking a shower or a bath or something, and then like if just a tiny part of a towel brushed against the nipple, I would just be like in just complete agony. I mean, I think it's hard to imagine how painful that is unless you've actually been there. People were warning me all the time, you know, prepare your nipples, like brush them with a scrubbing brush and all this stuff. And I was doing some stuff. I was like manipulating them in the mornings. But yeah, like one friend said to me, you know, it doesn't matter pretty much what you do. Nothing can prepare such a sensitive part of your body to be ready for being sucked on like 12, 15, 18 hours a day. You know, yeah, you know, we're not these kind of tribal people walking around with our nipples just like out brushing against things all the time. You know, we're like wrapped up all the time, and it can be excruciating, frankly, in the very beginning. And I absolutely understand why so many people try breastfeeding and just like, forget this is like ridiculously painful, and, you know, turn to whatever substitution. I understand that. I wouldn't choose that for myself. I didn't choose that for myself, but I totally get it, why people do that. And, you know, I have really dear friends who have been through excruciating things as well with those first days and weeks of breastfeeding. You know, mastitis and infections and just all the bleeding and cracking, and yeah, it's the kind of stuff that people don't really talk about, you know. One of the agonies of getting into that whole rhythm. But once you're into it, it's totally fine. You know, a dear friend of ours, she had massive issues with mastitis, and now her son is, you know, 2, I think, and they're still, you know, full-term breastfeeding. And she says it's, you know, one of the biggest joys of her life, and she's so glad that she was able and willing to push through that excruciating pain to have that relationship with him and to be able to feed him in that way, which I really, really admire, the women who go through that kind of stuff. I mean, the stuff that I went through was excruciating in its own way. Yeah, some of the things that women go through in the name of giving their children the ultimate nutrition, yeah, it's pretty amazing. I see that we're almost at 15 minutes. Is there a quick last one I could answer? Cradle Cap. Someone else was asking about Cradle Cap. Is there anything we would recommend to do for that? I just try and remove it off Araya's head. You know, not all babies get Cradle Cap, but most of them do. I think it's like 80% or something get Cradle Cap, which, if you don't know, is just this kind of like scaly thing that they get on their scalp. And as far as anything I've ever read or anybody seems to know, it doesn't like disturb at all. It's just something that's there. I actually heard one woman say she believes it's to do with sugar content in the mother's diet. So doesn't have to be like refined sugar, but any kind of like sweetness can lead to that build up. I don't know, I've only ever heard that from one person. Some people say it's to do with like protection from the sun, whatever. I've removed it all a couple of times from Mariah's head and she still has some at this point. The way that we remove it is to just dump a load of oil on her head, like coconut oil or sesame or whatever, and just kind of let that sit there for a few hours, and then either kind of like rub it like that off, or when we're in the bath, just like remove it a bit, you know, or if she's breastfeeding, just kind of remove some off. And it comes off really easily that way when it's softened up with oil. Some friends didn't remove the cradle cap until like 2 or 3 years old, and it seemed like they kind of wished that they'd removed it earlier because it was kind of more difficult and maybe it was affecting the hair growth and things like that. So yeah, I just would encourage that if you are looking at cradle cap and wondering what to do about it, just put some kind of nice natural oil on and remove it that way. All right, that was quite a lot of questions, I think, like 7 or something. Still more to come, so I'm sure I'll be back at some point answering more of your questions. But for now, thank you, and happy Christmas to those of you who celebrate, and see you again soon. Ciao!